But please don't laugh. So, first of all, Trump called Putin's complaints about Zelensky supposedly being illegitimate nonsense. But at the same time, he said that actually he would impose sanctions against Russia and guess who else? That's right, against Ukraine. Against the victim of this aggression, whom Trump supposedly supports. Madness? Maybe. Let's figure it out. Besides that, we are now going to discuss how the American leader promised an economic war against Russia if it avoids negotiations. Meanwhile, Stephen Witkoff, a man who supposedly acts as a negotiator between the Russian and Ukrainian sides, well, he does visit Russia, but for some reason not Ukraine, makes the following statement that, he will in fact be heading to Ukraine this week. Interesting, what will they talk about? And of course, looming on the horizon is Trump's visit to China. Many analysts agree that this very meeting could be decisive in ending Russia's war against Ukraine. I have my doubts. Share your opinion in the comments. And now I suggest you watch the segment. My name is Alexander Prepodobny. Let's go.
US President Trump called Lavrov's statements about Zelensky's illegitimacy and Putin's refusal to meet with him nonsense and a show.
It doesn't matter what they say, they're just putting on a show. Everyone is just putting on a really big show, it seems.
We recognize him as the de facto head of the regime, and in that case, we are ready to meet with him. But when it comes to signing documents, we need a very clear understanding that the person signing them is legitimate. And according to the constitution of Ukraine, Zelensky is currently not legitimate. President Putin made it clear that he is ready to meet with Zelensky if there is a real agenda for the summit. And that agenda is not ready at all.
His statement is in many ways playing to the audience. This is an attempt to demonstrate his own political weight, which he is rapidly losing precisely because of such statements and his inability to resolve issues on the ground, so to speak, right? For the most part, final military and effective economic solutions exist somewhere in the realm of Trump's mind, but they are rarely examples or concrete cases in real politics and economics.
Donald Trump also explicitly promised a significant economic war against Russia if it deliberately avoids any meaningful negotiations.
I want to stop this. This won't be a world war, but it will be an economic war. And the economic war will be tough, very tough for Russia. And I don't want that. But we need to look at the situation more broadly. After all, Zelensky is not entirely innocent either. It takes two to tango. I say this all the time. They need to be brought to the negotiating table. Right now, I have a normal relationship with Zelensky, but it's completely different from before, because we no longer pay money to Ukraine.
Obviously, Trump's position is changing very slowly, but it is changing with regard to Russia. But for now, it is rather quite difficult to definitively say that there is any truly decisive point of view that could potentially become a significant trigger for a substantial change in policy and a real, tangible increase in pressure from the United States on Russia.
According to Trump's special envoy Witkoff, Putin is ready to sign a peace agreement.
Yes, absolutely, he wants peace. There is a peace proposal on the table. Putin really did say this, and we hope he will keep his promise.
It is probably only a secret to Trump that Putin understands only the language of force. In order to achieve peace, it is necessary to create the kind of conditions that will make Putin afraid, where his army will start to fall apart. And then the Nobel Peace Prize, so desired by Trump, might actually end up in his hands.
Witkoff also announced a meeting with representatives of Ukraine this week.
I will meet with Ukrainians this week. The meeting will be in New York. This is a big signal, and we communicate with the Russians every day, and we might see a bilateral meeting.
Meetings between groups and representatives of the US and Ukraine in various formats are happening constantly. Not all of them have any political impact. Often, these particular negotiations are highly technical, especially, I think, in the broader context of selling American weapons at Europe's considerable expense, effectively using European money. Recently, Lindsey Graham publicly stated that supposedly the United States is preparing to lift the existing ban on using American-made weapons for strikes deep inside the territory of Russia. This could indeed be a very significant step forward in the overall strategic system of this particular policy.
President Zelensky also reported that this week there will be contacts with a number of countries that could serve as platforms for negotiations with the Russians.
This week there will be contacts with Turkey, with Gulf countries, and with European countries that could serve as platforms for talks with the Russians. On our part, everything will be as ready as possible to end the war. It is important that our partners confirm this, and going forward, everything will depend solely on the will of world leaders, first and foremost the United States of America, to put pressure on Russia.
It seems that everyone is preparing for negotiations except Putin. According to analysts, Putin will reject the proposal from the United States and Europe regarding security guarantees for Ukraine. All recent statements by Russian officials point to this.
It is absolutely clear to everyone that there are a number of principles that, according to Washington, must be accepted, including renouncing NATO membership and discussing territorial issues, and Zelensky said no to all of them. He also said no to repealing the legislation that bans the Russian language.
In order to end the war, and as we can see, for Trump, this is truly one of the highest priorities. The very approach needs to be changed. We need to stop trying to persuade Putin, stop looking for ways to approach him, and instead act decisively and with focus. And in this context, of course, the first thing is sanctions, and the second is supporting Ukraine in the military sphere.
We can only guess how much more time and how many more Ukrainians killed it will take for Trump to admit that Putin is not actually his friend, but a ruthless killer who manipulates everyone around him for his own interests.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
So, friends, the real gasoline collapse is now reaching the Russian capital as well. An explosion on the Ryazan-Moscow oil pipeline has halted deliveries to Moscow. We'll tell you all the details in just a minute. In addition, we'll talk about how Russia's summer offensive in Ukraine has completely failed. This is already the second wave of Russians who, after breaking through some part of the front, are trying to gain a foothold. But so far, they are facing massive resistance. Nothing is working out. We'll show you all the evidence and videos in the next few seconds. In addition, we'll talk about how, unfortunately, the Russian army has entered the territory of the Dnipro region for the first time. Right now, a clearing operation is underway, but nevertheless, we'll be looking at the real situation with you. And we'll also discuss how the Russians have put forward their so-called peace proposal regarding the Donetsk region. Steve Witkoff was the first to talk about this. What the Ukrainian delegation, and all of us, will be pressured to agree to, we'll discuss right now. My name is Alexander Prepodobny. Let's get started.
The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine confirms that Ukrainian troops are engaged in combat operations near the villages of Zaporizhzhia and Novogrihorivka in the Dnipropetrovsk region. The Ukrainian command also draws attention to the fact that reports of these settlements allegedly being occupied by Russian forces do not correspond to reality.
It became quite abundantly clear that this significant advance would inevitably happen after the Russian occupation forces had moved well beyond Zeleny Pol and Novopil in the strategically important Donetsk region and subsequently reached Tomirivka. In other words, their further anticipated movement was supposed to proceed accordingly and logically along the natural courses of the rivers. Again, this is movement in the direction of the Volchya River. And if we're talking about the Zaporizhzhia region, it's movement toward the Yangul and Vorona rivers. So the main objective for these units right now is to move along the channels of the Volchya and Vorona rivers directly to the junction, and then continue advancing, if we're talking about the Zaporizhzhia region, to encircle Huliaipol. And if we're talking about the Dnipropetrovsk region, then it's movement in the direction of Pokrovsk.
The Russians remotely scattered anti-personnel mines of the Petal type on one of the streets in Kherson. The National Police note that this weapon is extremely dangerous for local residents as it is very hard to spot in the environment. And for the mine to detonate, it's enough to simply step on it or drive over it.
For them, this indiscriminate form of mining is directly related to terror against the civilian population. That is, just like the uncontrolled artillery shelling of residential areas, the indiscriminate use of multiple rocket launch systems, and targeted drone strikes against civilians, all of this is an integral part of their terror against cities located in the front line or near rear zones.
National Guard fighters have shown how they destroy enemy artillery and ammunition depots in the Pokrovsk direction. Russian equipment has been disabled and the ammo dump put on quite a fire show, our defenders summarize. Russia's summer offensive in Ukraine has completely failed, reports Bild military observer Julian Repke. Although the pace of the Russian troops' advance has been the highest since November of last year.
I can't say that Russia has completely failed its offensive, because during the summer offensive of 25, in this phase, Russian forces captured more than 1,300 square kilometers of Ukrainian territory. So it's hard to call this an absolute failure. But they really did not accomplish their main objectives that were set before them. namely the capture of the city, the encirclement of Pokrovsk from 3 directions, the encirclement of Kostiantynivka from 3 directions, the encirclement of Siversk from 3 directions, as well as Kupiansk, Lyman, and Borova.
Russian failures are nothing new, especially when they plan to go up against new Ukrainian drones with sticks. In this video, a Russian assault soldier explains how the command ordered them to fend off a Ukrainian Baba Yaga drone with a stick so it wouldn't terrorize the infantry.
So we've created a new killer basically for the Baba Yaga. And in the command, it's truly shocking. They literally said to use a simple stick, a mere wooden stick, against the formidable Baba Yaga, so it wouldn't torment the vulnerable infantry.
This is Andrei. He's already fought until he got wounded, but he doesn't plan to stop fighting. He says as soon as he's discharged, he'll head for Washington. For now, he's thanking the volunteers for their gifts.
Just got a little wounded, scratched up.
So nothing serious then?
Yeah, everything's fine now. Next week I'll probably be discharged and back to the fight. We'll crawl all the way to Washington.
But our next hero doesn't have such a rosy impression of the war. Serviceman Sergei Pogodayev showed the path of an assault trooper from arriving at the front to ending up in a wheelchair. First, he says that there is no water at the positions, the soldiers drink urine, and there is no evacuation for the dead and wounded, and that all of Russia should know about this. And at the end, he picks out a new vehicle for himself.
It's perfectly fine. I used to look at luxurious Mercedes-Benz vehicles, but now my attention is drawn to these impressive kinds of powerful machines.
This is Alexander Chernyshev. He suffers from chronic hepatitis C and does not want to fight. Because of this, he and his comrades are being threatened with being zeroed out on Ukrainian territory.
They're trying to send me, even though I have hepatitis, to a combat mission. I refuse and ask to be prosecuted, but instead they threaten to zero me out.
Along with Chernyshev, Alexei Chechnev and Yuri Kuznetsov are also in handcuffs. They are asking to be prosecuted for refusing to participate in combat and are appealing to the public for help so that their voices can be heard. In this video, a former Russian army serviceman calls on soldiers from Bashkiria to switch sides and fight for Ukraine.
I left the Russian army because of fratricide, hatred towards us, and lack of respect. And I joined the Bashkir company, a place where we are consistently respected, truly valued, and always treated well.
The Bashkirs, as they themselves say, are fighting against Russian Nazism and disrespect. They also help with the exchange of Bashkir prisoners and the search for their relatives.